Are you frustrated with the world and unsure what to do about it? Then I highly recommend joining your local Toastmasters club. Toastmasters International teaches public speaking and leadership skills through a worldwide network of clubs. But let's face it, many people are scared to death of public speaking. Comedian Jerry Seinfeld said it best when he said, "According to most studies, people's number one fear is public speaking. Number two is death. Death is number two. Does that sound right? That means for the average person, if they go to a funeral, they'd rather be in the casket than doing the eulogy." Mr. Toastmaster, my fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests, I'm here tonight to tell you my story, that unlike most people, I'm actually a bit of a ham. For the past 19 years, I've been a seasonal park ranger at Crater Lake National Park in Oregon and Everglades National Park in Florida. I actually loved every minute of standing in front of an audience in these iconic places, sharing my love of nature. I even came up with some of my own jokes as a park ranger, such as, what did one continental plate say to the other after the earthquake? Any guesses?
You moved.
It's not my fault. I thought that was hilarious. It's kind of working across the room here. Some of my fellow rangers even stole that joke from me. But as a ranger, there's something I saw that was not funny at all. Any guesses? Yeah, global warming, also called climate change. Working as a park ranger, one of the things I quickly learned is that people expect park rangers to know everything, don't you? Admit it. Yes, you do. So what happened is that 18 years ago, I was giving ranger talks in Everglades National Park, and people started asking me about this global warming thing. And I knew nothing about it. And visitors hate it when you tell them I don't know. So I quickly ran to the nearest Miami bookstore and also library to read all the scientific books I could find on climate change. I discovered sea level rise along the mangrove coastline in Everglades National Park. Sea level rose 8 inches in the 20th century, which is 4 times more than what had risen in previous centuries, in the past 3,000 years. And along the mangrove coastline, which is represented by that lime green section of that map, sea level is supposed to rise upwards of 3 feet in this century, which would overrun the mangroves and swallow up basically all of Everglades National Park and even nearby Miami. And that's interesting because the highest point on the park road is only about 3 feet above sea level. It shocked me that the alligators and crocodiles and beautiful flamingos that I saw in the Everglades could lose this ideal coastal habitat because of sea level rise enhanced by climate change. Even worse is sea level rise could spell disaster for the millions of people living in South Florida. In the last couple years, evidence is mounting for what's called sunny day flooding. Anybody ever heard of that before? That's when, during the highest tides of the year, the king tides, ocean water is actually showing up on the Miami streets. And even in March of this year, National Geographic had an article where they actually project upwards of a 6-foot sea level rise by the end of the century, which actually would displace 13 million Americans living in these coastal counties. By 2008, I became so worried about climate change that I quit my winter job in Everglades National Park. Since then, I've been spending my winters in St. Louis, educating folks here about climate change, which led me to join South County Toastmasters 6 years ago this month. I joined Toastmasters not because I had a fear of public speaking. I had a fear about talking about climate change publicly. I was scared if I talked about climate change in a public setting, people would want to argue with me and angrily confront me if they disagree with me about it. But let's face it, talking about climate change is actually a bit of a downer. I like what clean energy investor and TED speaker Dan Miller said about this. He said, quote, "Society conspires to suppress the discussion of climate change. As somebody who talks about climate change a lot, I can vouch for this. For me, talking about climate change can seem like farting at a cocktail party." And nobody appreciates that. So for my friends, if you are scared to talk about climate change, I advise that you join a Toastmasters group. You will be joining a supportive group, a supportive community group that will teach you how to engage and talk with people, how to disagree with you about climate change. I like what Dr. Martin Luther King once said. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said that if we are mature, we may grow and learn and profit from the wisdom of our brothers who are called the opposition. For the past 6 years, I am very thankful for my fellow Toastmasters who disagree with me strongly about climate change. They have helped me become a more effective climate change communicator. I know this because some of my fellow Toastmasters even shifted their positions on climate change because of me. Take our club president, Adam Cattell, who was launched tonight. If you go on YouTube, watch a speech I gave in this room 5 years ago called "The Debate is Over." In that speech, I talked about how 97% of climate scientists think that current global warming is real and human-caused. Now, after this speech, I had a 5-minute question and answer period, and Adam forcefully argued with me with his questions how he disagreed with me. Do you remember that, Adam? It's been years, hasn't it? Vaguely. Yeah. Well, Adam and I never backed down from our positions. But what's interesting is that if you talk to most climate advocates, they would probably never want to talk again to Adam or somebody that argued with them so strongly. But after that speech, Adam actually came up to me and complimented me on my speech. 3 years later, I was preparing for another Toastmaster speech. Surprise on climate change. And this time I actually contacted Adam. And he generously met with me for coffee to practice my speech. This speech also called for a question and answer period. And I actually groaned to Adam. I said, somebody's probably going to ask me, how can you say that global warming is real when it was cold or snowing recently in St. Louis? And Adam actually told me, he said, Brian, don't worry about that. You've got that covered. You've already told us in a previous speech that weather is a snapshot, climate is a movie. Weather is something that's happening right here, right now, in St. Louis, Missouri, outside your window at 8:25 p.m. Climate is something that happens globally, across centuries, decades and centuries, a long period of time. Wow, this felt like a big victory for me. Here's Adam, who's still very dismissive of human-caused climate change, but yet he gets this vital concept. I've been so appreciative of Adam and also Aaron, of their friendship over the years and their advice, that my wife Tanya and I actually invited them to our wedding just over a year ago. So, for those who are frustrated with the world and unsure what to do about climate change, the best tool I know is to join a Toastmasters group. You will learn presentation skills, confidence, and build up your expertise. Even those who strongly disagree with you will be helpful and supportive. You will also make professional speakers Dan Miller proud that you can speak about climate change effectively and not stink up a room like a fart trying to explain it and embarrass our club founder, Howard Brandt. And best of all, you may overcome your fear of public speaking, which according to Jerry Seinfeld and many others, can be a fate worse than death. Mr. Toastmaster, Madam Toastmaster.